Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 140th episode of VDV Talk. On this episode, I'm going to be discussing and giving my thoughts on the 2018 movie Green Book. Let's get into it. This movie starts with giving the audience its introduction to one of the main characters of Tony. We see him lose his job because the place he was working at is closing for repairs. In looking for another job to get by for a few months, we then get introduced to our other main character of Dr. Don Shirley. Don essentially hires Tony to be his driver. As Don embarks on a concert tour of the Deep South, should note that this movie takes place in the 1960s. So yeah. Of course, over the course of this movie, we see how each character is treated in terms of the time period the movie is set in, but the best part to me, you see how each character starts out as polar opposites that will never get along, but then along the way, each person learns something from each other that actually enriches their life in some way. And that is truly the greatest part of this movie. This is because by the end, Don takes over driving the final stretch to get Tony back to his family by Christmas Eve. He shoves Tony out and then returns to his home. Tony is greeted by the whole family, whereas Don has just his servant and no one else, and ends up going to spend Christmas Eve with Tony and his family. Wholesome ending. So, what did I think about the Green Book? Well, considering I was trying not to talk about parts of this movie during this synopsis, this definitely is on my list of favorite movies to watch. Honestly, I don't know how I missed out on this movie back in 2018, as it's right up my alley. The acting is just pure on-screen chemistry between these two. It's just so good. I absolutely love the seemingly contrasting nature between Tony and Don. Tony is like this picture-perfect American with a big family, and in the context of the beginning of the movie, is shown to be not too fond of African Americans when he puts two glasses that some workers drank out of in the trash and not in the sink with the other dishes. Don, of course, comes off like a very rich and selfish man, and while that is largely true, he does have his own struggles we learn about along the way. He has an estranged brother, he was married but it didn't work out because of his career. Of course, the biggest one is that while he may be a very wealthy and famous person, that doesn't really belong anywhere. He doesn't belong anywhere. He doesn't fit with most African American people. He doesn't fit in with wealthy white folks either. He's kind of stuck between this state while having to endure the prejudices of both sides, basically. Don actually has a meltdown about this when Tony tells Don that he thinks he's more black than Don is because of the kind of music he listens to and the kind of food he eats. And that in some cases Don has never even heard of or eaten these things. It's a terrific scene that really shows the hardships that Don has to deal with while showcasing that Tony is kind of just good at assuming that all black people like the same foods or listen to the same kinds of music. The two also kind of help each other better themselves in ways. Along the 2 months that Tony is away from his family, he writes letters to his wife that at a certain point Don helps him write them much better, more romantically, to help convey how much Tony really misses his wife. He also helps Tony learn to speak a little more professionally too. On the flip side, we see how Tony shows Don how to be kind of more of just a normal person, in a manner of speaking, to not act like that rich, selfish asshole all of the time. Of course, the standout scene example is when Tony stops for KFC in actual Kentucky, offers some to Don, and Don just doesn't understand the concept of eating food with one's hands. He does eventually try it, and it's like his whole world got a little bit bigger by simply enjoying food with his hands. There are just so many standout scenes in this movie, too many for me to describe. A lot of them show racial inequality, and it's handled wonderfully in this movie. But I'll mention one where the two actually get pulled over by cops. Both of them are ordered to get out of the car while it's raining. One of the cops insults Tony by saying that he's half black, so Tony actually punches the cop, and that lands them both in jail. Don eventually convinces the officers to give him his one phone call, and he uses it. Eventually the cops get a call, and they're acting so bewildered with whoever is on the other end, and one cop even mentions not wanting the National Guard involved. Our two eventually get released, charges dropped, and Don reveals that he actually called the Secretary of Defense. Okay. I'll do one more. Don has a gig at what is basically a plantation, and he needs to use the bathroom, and the host is basically like, well, you can use the outhouse near the woods. Don, of course, doesn't like that. He thinks, oh, I'll just use the bathroom inside. And, Don sticks to his guns so much that he actually has Tony drive him 20 minutes back to his motel just to use the bathroom, and then drive 20 minutes back to this plantation to finish the show. But yeah, this movie just has so many good moments that the only negative I have is that I actually don't have any negative things to say about this movie. Everything was well done. The acting, the music, everything. Green Book is a great and enjoyable movie that I definitely recommend giving a watch. That's going to do it though for this episode, so if you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.